June 14th, 1942. Somewhere in the Libyan desert, 50 miles east of Tobruk, Hauptmann Klaus Steiner squinted through the dust cloud rising from his supply convoy. 12 trucks, 800 gallons of fuel. Enough to keep Rommel's panzers rolling for another week. The war in North Africa depended on convoys like this. If the fuel reached the front, the Afrika Korps would push the British back to Cairo. If it didn't, Rommel's tanks would become expensive metal coffins in the sand. Steiner checked his map against the road sign ahead. The wooden post leaned slightly, white paint peeling. The stenciled letters were clear enough. Fuel Depot 7A, 25 kilometers west. Perfect. They were on schedule, maybe even ahead of it. His driver, a kid from Munich named Werner, pointed at the sign. "Herr Hauptmann, the map shows the depot to the north." Steiner glanced at the British map they'd captured at Gazala 3 weeks ago. The paper was stained with blood. The previous owner hadn't needed it anymore. The map did show depot, 7A to the north, but maps in the desert were worthless. Sandstorms shifted dunes overnight. Tracks disappeared in hours. The only reliable navigation tools were the road signs the British had installed along their supply routes. "The British moved the depot," Steiner said. "Follow the sign." The convoy turned west. 25 kilometers later, they found nothing. No depot, no fuel drums, no tire tracks, just sand and rock stretching to the horizon. Werner stopped the lead truck. "Herr Hauptmann, there's nothing here." Steiner climbed down and walked to where the sign had promised a fuel depot. He kicked at the sand. Nothing. He pulled out his compass and rechecked their position. They were exactly where the sign had directed them, which meant they'd just burned 400 gallons of fuel driving to an empty stretch of desert. Steiner looked back at his convoy. The other drivers were climbing out of their cabs, confusion on their faces. Some were checking their own maps, others were scanning the horizon for any sign of the depot. "Turn around," Steiner ordered. "We go back." But going back meant another 25 kilometers, another 100 gallons of fuel. By the time they reached the original crossroads, half the convoy would be running on fumes. Steiner's radio operator, a corporal named Franz, jogged over with his field radio. "Herr Hauptmann, should I report this to headquarters?" Steiner hesitated. Reporting a missing fuel depot meant admitting he'd gotten lost in the desert following a road sign. It meant explaining to his superiors why half his fuel was gone before reaching the front. It meant questions he didn't want to answer. "No," Steiner said. "We find the depot ourselves." They didn't find it. By the time the convoy limped back to the main supply route, 3 trucks had run completely dry. The remaining vehicles barely had enough fuel to reach the German lines. Steiner's delivery should have sustained a panzer battalion for a week. Now it would last maybe 2 days. Hauptmann Klaus Steiner had no idea that the road sign he'd trusted had been moved 30 miles from its original location by a truck driver from Texas who'd never graduated high school. Corporal Jack Harrison was drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil and watching the sun come up over the Mediterranean. Everyone called him Tex, not because he wore a cowboy hat or spoke with an exaggerated drawl. He didn't. But he'd driven trucks across Texas for 6 years before the war. The name stuck the first time someone heard his accent. Most of the British 8th Army supply drivers were from London or Manchester. A Texas drawl stood out. Tex had been in North Africa for 4 months, long enough to learn that the desert didn't care about your rank, your equipment, or your tactics. The desert cared about two things: water and navigation. If you had both, you lived. If you lost either, you died. Right now, the British were losing at navigation. Lieutenant Hollis, a thin man with a mustache that belonged in a different war, walked over with a clipboard. "Harrison, you're on the Tobruk run today." "Again." Tex set down his coffee. "That's the third time this week." "The third time, because the Germans keep hitting our convoys," Hollis said. "They know our routes better than we do." That was the problem. When Rommel's Afrika Korps overran British positions, they captured everything: fuel dumps, ammunition stores, maps, road signs, supply schedules. The Germans knew where every British depot was located because they'd stolen the paperwork that documented it all. Worse, they were using British infrastructure against them. The road signs that British engineers had installed across the desert to guide supply convoys were now guiding German convoys straight to British supplies. "How are they finding our depots?" Tex asked. "They follow our road signs," Hollis said. "We built a navigation network across the entire desert. The Germans are reading it like a roadmap to our supplies." Tex had been thinking about this problem for weeks. He'd driven Route 66 from Chicago to Los Angeles so many times he could navigate it blindfolded. He knew every truck stop, every shortcut, every speed trap. He knew that road signs were only useful if they told the truth. Back in Texas, farmers used to put up fake signs to keep tourists away from their water wells. "Swimming hole, 10 miles north." There was no swimming hole, just a sign that sent city folks driving in the wrong direction, while the real well stayed hidden. What if the British did the same thing to the Germans? "Lieutenant," Tex said, "what if we move the signs?" Hollis looked up from his clipboard. "What?" "The road signs. What if we move them? The Germans are following our signs to our depots. So we change the signs, send them somewhere else." "Somewhere else where?" "Nowhere," Tex said. "Middle of the desert. 100 miles from anything. They follow the sign, burn their fuel looking for a depot that doesn't exist, and run out of gas before they get back." Hollis stared at him. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Why?" "Because the Germans aren't idiots, Harrison. They have maps, compasses, trained navigators. They won't just blindly follow a road sign into the desert." Tex picked up his coffee. "With respect, sir, maps don't work in the desert. Sand moves, landmarks disappear. You can't navigate by sight because everything looks the same. That's why the British built the signs in the first place." "The Germans have compasses." "Compasses tell you north, they don't tell you where the fuel depot is." Tex leaned forward. "Sir, I've been driving in deserts for 6 years. Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, it's all the same. You follow the signs or you die." "The Germans are new here. Most of their drivers are from Europe. They don't know desert navigation. They trust the signs because the signs are all they've got." Hollis shook his head. "Even if you're right, moving road signs won't win the war." "No, sir," Tex said, "but it might slow Rommel down long enough for us to win it." Hollis walked away without answering. That was fine. Tex hadn't expected permission. He was used to working without it. That night, Tex loaded 3 shovels and a crowbar into his truck. He waited until midnight. The German reconnaissance planes stopped flying. The British sentries were focused on the perimeter. Then he drove west. The road sign he wanted was 30 miles from the front line, far enough to avoid German patrols, close enough to matter. The sign marked the turnoff to a British fuel depot that held 10,000 gallons, the kind of target Rommel would kill for. Tex parked his truck and studied the sign in the moonlight, a simple wooden post driven 3 feet into the ground, Fuel Depot 7A, north 15 kilometers. He pulled the sign out of the ground. The wood came up easier than expected. Desert sand didn't hold things well. Tex carried the sign 40 yards down the road and replanted it at a different intersection. Now it read, Fuel Depot 7A, west 25 kilometers. West was wrong. West led to nothing. Just empty desert for 100 miles. But a German convoy following that sign would burn half its fuel, getting there, and the other half getting back, if they got back at all. Tex replaced the original signpost with a blank piece of wood. No markings, no directions, just a post that looked like it had lost its sign in a sandstorm. The whole operation took 15 minutes. He drove back to base before sunrise. Nobody noticed. He'd been gone. 3 days later, Lieutenant Hollis found Tex working on his truck engine. Harrison, intelligence intercepted a German radio message this morning. Tex didn't look up. Yeah? A supply convoy reported that they couldn't find Fuel Depot 7A. They drove 25 kilometers west of the main road and found nothing. They burned through 400 gallons of fuel and returned empty. Now, Tex looked up. That's so. Hollis stared at him for a long moment. You moved that sign, didn't you? I might have done some driving the other night. You disobeyed orders. You didn't give me any orders, sir. You just said my idea was stupid. Hollis should have been angry. Instead, he smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that appeared when a man realized he was wrong and didn't particularly mind. How many signs can you move in a week? Hollis asked. Depends. You giving me permission now? I'm giving you 3 volunteers and a truck. Move every sign between here and Gazala. Send Rommel on a tour of the empty desert. Let's see how he likes it. Tex wiped the grease off his hands. How many signs are we talking about? 200. Maybe more. Hollis pulled out a map and spread it across the hood of Tex's truck. The Germans have been using our supply network for months. Every road sign, every marker, every depot indicator. They trust these signs because the signs have been accurate. Until now. Tex studied the map. The British supply network covered thousands of square miles. Road signs marked routes to fuel depots, ammunition dumps, water stations, repair facilities, everything a modern army needed to survive in the desert. If the Germans were following those signs, then changing the signs meant controlling where the Germans went. What if we don't just move the signs? Tex said. What if we create new ones? New ones? Fake depots. We put up signs for fuel dumps that don't exist, water stations that aren't there. The Germans waste time and fuel looking for supplies that were never real in the first place. Hollis nodded slowly. A ghost supply network. Exactly. We make Rommel chase shadows. The volunteers showed up at 0200 hours. 3 men who either believed in Tech's plan or were bored enough to try anything. Private Danny Morrison, from Ohio, had driven delivery trucks in Cleveland before the war. Corporal Pete Kowalski, from Pennsylvania, had worked road construction. Sergeant Mike Chen, from California, had been a mechanic at a truck stop outside Sacramento. None of them were combat soldiers. They were drivers who understood that if you control the signs, you control where people go. Tex spread the map across the hood of his truck. Here's the situation. The Germans are following our road signs to our supply depots. We already proved we can redirect them by moving signs. Now we're going to do it at scale. Morrison studied the map. How many signs? Every sign between here and Gazala. Maybe 200. Kowalski whistled. That's a lot of night driving. That's why there's 4 of us. Tex marked locations with a grease pencil. We split into 2 teams. Each team takes a sector. We move the real signs and plant fake ones. The Germans waste fuel, chasing depots that don't exist. Chen pointed at marks near the front line. These are close to German positions. We go at night, Tex said. Luftwaffe doesn't fly after dark. German patrols stay close to their lines. 6-hour window between midnight and dawn. And if we run into a patrol, Morrison asked. We lie. Tell them we're lost. Ask for directions. Tex grinned. After all, we're just truck drivers. Nobody laughed. Night operations in the desert meant minefields, breakdowns, and German patrols. But Tex had been driving deserts for 6 years. He knew how to navigate by stars and read the ground for soft sand. We leave in 30 minutes, Tex said. Bring shovels, crowbars, and extra water. The first sign they hit was 40 miles west of British lines, a weather-beaten post marking the route to a water station. Tex pulled it out of the ground, while Morrison replanted it 3 miles down the road, pointing in the wrong direction. The second sign marked an ammunition dump. Tex moved it 15 miles south and created a new sign pointing to a non-existent fuel depot, another 20 miles beyond that. By 400 hours, they'd moved 12 signs and created 6 fake ones. Every fake sign pointed to supply depots that existed only on paper, fuel dumps in empty desert, water stations that were just sand, ammunition stores that were actually rock piles. The work was simple. Dig out the old sign, haul it to a new location, plant it deep so it wouldn't blow over. Make sure the lettering faced the right direction so German convoys would see it clearly. Tex had learned sign placement from the Texas Highway Department. Signs had to be visible from a quarter mile. They had to be angled so headlights reflected off them at night. They had to look official. The British had built professional signs, standardized fonts, clear directions, distance markers accurate to the kilometer, which made them perfect for deception. At 0530 hours, Chen radioed from his sector. Tex, we found a German supply dump. What? German dump. Fuel barrels, ammunition crates, hidden under camouflage netting about 10 miles north of the main road. Tex checked his map. That position wasn't marked anywhere. The Germans had a secret cache. How many guards? None that we can see. An idea formed. Put up a sign. What? Put up a British road sign pointing to that German dump. Something like British Fuel Depot 12B, north 8 kilometers. When the Germans find a British sign pointing to their secret cache, they'll think we've discovered it. They'll abandon the supplies and move them. Waste time, waste fuel, waste manpower. All because of one sign. Chen was quiet. You're devious. I'm a truck driver. We know how to mess with people. By dawn on June 18th, Tech's team had moved 47 road signs and created 18 fake ones. The entire British supply network between Tobruk and Gazala had been scrambled. Real depots had signs pointing in wrong directions. Fake depots had signs promising fuel and ammunition that didn't exist. German supply dumps had British markers that would make them look compromised. Lieutenant Hollis reviewed the results in the operations tent. This is either brilliant or insane. Can it be both? Tex asked. The problem is we don't know if it's working. Give it 3 days, Tex said. If the Germans are using our signs, they'll start reporting problems. They didn't have to wait 3 days. On June 19th, British intelligence intercepted a German radio transmission from a supply convoy near Gazala. Supply convoy, unable to locate fuel depot, marked on British signs, searched indicated area for 2 hours, no depot found. Requesting updated maps and coordinates. Hollis read the intercept twice. That's one convoy. One convoy wasted 4 hours and half their fuel, Tex said. How many convoys does Rommel run every day? Intelligence estimates 20 to 30. So, if we confuse half of them. Hollis did the math. 10 convoys wasting 4 hours and half their fuel daily, compounded over weeks, that was catastrophic. We need more signs, Hollis said. Over the next 2 weeks, Tech's operation expanded. What started with 4 volunteers grew to 20. What began with moving existing signs evolved into creating an entire phantom supply network. They fabricated signs for non-existent depots with official-sounding designations: Advanced Fuel Station, 23C, Emergency Water Point, 14A, Ammunition Cache, 7B. None of them were real. All of them looked legitimate. They installed the signs at realistic distances from main roads, close enough that German convoys would investigate, far enough that the detour would cost serious fuel. They added fake vehicle tracks leading to phantom depots. Tex would drive his truck in circles near the sign locations, creating tire marks that suggested regular supply traffic. On June 27th, a German mechanized column followed signs to what they thought was a major British ammunition dump 30 miles south of the main road. They found sand and rocks. The detour cost them 6 hours and 200 gallons of fuel. The convoy commander radioed back. British intelligence intercepted and translated. British supply signs are unreliable. Recommend disregarding all road markers and navigating by compass and map only. Tex read the intercept. They're catching on. Is that good? Morrison asked. It's perfect. Now they don't trust any signs, which means they're navigating blind in a desert where compasses don't tell you where the water is. By early July, Rommel's logistics officers issued orders to ignore British road signs entirely. German convoys would navigate using maps, compasses, and dead reckoning, which should have solved their problem. Except most German drivers weren't desert navigators. They were truck drivers from Munich and Berlin and Hamburg. They knew European roads with proper intersections and landmarks. They didn't know how to navigate featureless desert where every dune looked identical. Navigation by compass required constant course corrections. 1 degree off over 50 miles meant arriving 10 miles from your destination. German convoys started getting lost even without Tech's interference. On July 8th, a supply column took a wrong bearing and ended up 40 miles south of their intended position. They ran out of fuel trying to correct. British patrols found the abandoned trucks 2 days later. On July 12th, another convoy, navigating by compass, drove into a British minefield. 4 trucks destroyed, 12 men killed. Tex heard about these incidents through intelligence reports. Each one was a small victory, not dramatic, not the kind that made headlines, but cumulatively they were bleeding Rommel dry. Then Tex had another idea. What if we don't just confuse them? He said to Hollis. What if we guide them? Guide them where? Into traps, we put up signs that lead to British defensive positions. German convoys follow the signs thinking they're heading to supplies. Instead, they drive straight into our guns. Hollis stared at him. That's dark. War is dark, sir. Using road signs to lure men into ambushes. They're already trying to kill us, Tex said. I'm just helping them take the wrong turn. Hollis thought for a moment. Then he nodded. Do it. The first ambush sign went up on July 15th, a professional-looking marker indicating a fuel depot 20 miles north of the main supply road. Clean lettering, accurate distance, official designation. The fuel depot was real. What the sign didn't mention was that the depot was now behind British defensive lines, protected by anti-tank guns and infantry positions. On July 17th, a German convoy of 8 trucks followed the sign. They approached from the east, expecting to find the depot abandoned or lightly guarded. Instead, they drove into a killing zone. British anti-tank guns opened fire at 400 yards. 2 trucks exploded immediately. The rest tried to turn around but were boxed in by terrain. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. 8 trucks destroyed. 27 Germans killed. 3 captured. 1 captured driver told his interrogators they'd been following a British road sign. The interrogation report reached Tech's desk 2 days later. That night, Tex didn't sleep. He lay in his tent, thinking about the interrogation report. 27 enemy killed, 3 captured. Those weren't statistics. Those were men. Drivers like him. Men who knew how to read a road sign and follow directions. Men who saw that sign and thought they were heading to fuel. Instead, they drove into British guns. Morrison spoke from the next cot. You awake? Yeah. Still thinking about those Germans? Yeah. Morrison was quiet for a moment. My brother was at Gazala, tank crew. His Sherman took a German shell through the turret. He burned to death before anyone could get him out. Tex said nothing. The shell that killed him came from a German tank, Morrison continued. That tank needed fuel to drive there, ammunition to fire, supplies that came on trucks driven by men like the ones we killed yesterday. Every German truck we stop means fewer British soldiers die. Maybe one of those trucks would have carried the shell that kills the next man's brother. Maybe not, but we don't get to choose. We just do our job. Tex stared at the darkness. Get some sleep, Morrison said. We have 12 more signs to plant tomorrow. By the end of July 1942, Rommel's logistics network was in chaos. German convoys were getting lost, running out of fuel, driving into ambushes. Intelligence intercepts showed the problem was systemic. German logistics officers were filing reports about unreliable navigation, missing supply points, and fuel shortages that didn't match consumption estimates. Rommel reportedly demanded an investigation into why his supply convoys were failing at unprecedented rates. The investigation blamed British air attacks, long supply lines, and poor coordination. Nobody blamed the road signs. On July 29th, British reconnaissance spotted a German convoy of 30 trucks stopped in the middle of the desert, 60 miles from anywhere. The trucks were arranged in a circle. But there was no attack. The convoy had simply run out of fuel. They had followed a British sign to a fuel depot that didn't exist, drove 120 miles round trip, found nothing, ran dry, trying to get back. British ground forces captured all 30 trucks intact, full of ammunition, spare parts, and medical supplies bound for Rommel's frontline units. When Tex heard about it, he smiled. 30 trucks, hundreds of tons of supplies, captured because a German convoy trusted a road sign. Morrison clapped him on the shoulder. "How does it feel?" "Feels like we're winning," Tex said. August 3rd, 1942. German Afrika Korps. Headquarters, 80 miles west of El Alamein. Oberst Heinrich Bauer spread 11 incident reports across his desk. Each one described the same problem: supply convoys departing on schedule, arriving late or not at all, fuel consumption double the expected rate. The first report came from Hauptmann Steiner. Convoy diverted 25 kilometers west following British road sign. Depot not found. 400 gallons wasted. The second report came 3 days later. Different convoy, different sign. Same result. Fuel dump promised. Nothing delivered. By the 11th report, Bauer saw the pattern. British road signs were lying. He called his logistics officer. Major Werner Kleist had been coordinating supply movements for 6 months. Good officer, methodical, the kind of man who checked every detail twice. "Major, how many convoys have reported navigation problems in the past 2 weeks?" Kleist consulted his log. 17 convoys reported delays, 9 reported fuel shortages, 5 reported complete failure to locate marked depots. All following British road signs. "Yes, sir. The signs have been our primary navigation tool since we captured this territory." Bauer stood and walked to the map on his wall. Red pins marked German positions, blue pins marked known British supply depots, yellow pins marked the road sign network. There were hundreds of yellow pins. "The British are moving their signs," Bauer said. Kleist frowned. "Why would they do that, sir?" "Moving signs doesn't destroy our tanks. It doesn't stop our aircraft. It wastes our fuel. Every convoy that drives 50 kilometers in the wrong direction burns fuel we cannot replace. Every hour our trucks spend lost in the desert is an hour they're not delivering ammunition to the front." Bauer pulled 3 yellow pins from the map. "Issue orders to all convoy commanders. Disregard British road signs. Navigate by compass and map only." Kleist hesitated. "Sir, our drivers are not experienced desert navigators. Most of them are from Germany. They rely on the signs. Then they learn to navigate without signs. The British have turned their own infrastructure into a weapon. We stop using it immediately." The order went out that afternoon. Tex heard about it 4 days later when British intelligence intercepted a German radio transmission. "All units disregard British road markers. Navigate by map and compass. Road signs are unreliable." Lieutenant Hollis read the intercept to Tex. "They figured it out." "Took them long enough," Tex said. "This means the sign operation is finished. If they're not using the signs, we can't misdirect them." Tex shook his head. "It means we change tactics." "To what?" "They think the signs are unreliable, so we make some signs reliable again." Hollis waited. "We put up signs that tell the truth," Tex continued. "Real depots, real distances, accurate directions. German convoys ignore them because they think all British signs are fake. They drive past actual fuel dumps because their orders say disregard all markers." "That's devious." "That's navigation, sir. You can't win if you don't know where you are." But Tex had another idea. One he didn't share with Hollis yet. If the Germans were navigating by map and compass, Tex needed to corrupt their maps. August 8th, 1942. 0300 hours. Tex and his team drove to a location marked on captured German maps as Fuel Reserve Station 4. The Germans had established the depot 3 weeks ago. Camouflaged fuel drums, hidden under netting. No guards, just supplies, waiting for pickup. Morrison pointed at the drums. "We destroy them. No, Tex said. We moved them. They spent 4 hours relocating 60 fuel drums from their marked position to a new location 8 kilometers south. They replanted the camouflage netting at the original site, making it look like the depot was still there. Then Tex did something else. He scattered empty fuel drums around the original location. Drums with British markings. He left tire tracks from British trucks. He planted a few British supply forms partially buried in sand. When a German convoy arrived looking for their hidden fuel cache, they would find evidence that the British had discovered it and looted it. The Germans would assume their operational security had failed. They would move other hidden depots, waste manpower, waste time, all because of empty drums and fake paperwork. Chen radioed from his position 2 kilometers east. Tex, we found another German cache. Ammunition this time. Mark it. We come back tomorrow night. Over the next week, Tech's team relocated or sabotaged 7 German supply points. They didn't destroy anything. Destruction would confirm enemy action. Instead, they created confusion. Fuel drums moved 8 kilometers from their mapped positions. Ammunition crates relocated to similar-looking terrain 5 kilometers away. Water stations that appeared looted but were actually just relocated. German supply officers started filing reports that their hidden caches were compromised. Intelligence officers launched investigations to find the British spies who were discovering German supply points. There were no spies, just a truck driver from Texas who understood that if you control what people think, they know. You control what they do. August 14th, 1942, a German convoy of 22 trucks departed from Benghazi carrying fuel and ammunition for the front line. The convoy commander, Hauptmann Friedrich Koch, had strict orders: ignore British road signs, navigate by compass. Koch was a good officer. He checked his compass every 15 minutes. He verified his position against his map. He trusted his instruments, but his map was wrong. The map showed a direct route northeast to the front line. What the map didn't show was that British engineers had built a new road 2 weeks ago that looked exactly like the route on Koch's map, but curved 15 degrees south. Koch followed what he thought was the mapped route. His compass showed northeast. His speedometer matched the expected distance. Everything seemed correct, except he was driving parallel to the front line instead of toward it. After 6 hours, Koch stopped to check his position. According to his map, he should be approaching the German lines. Instead, he saw nothing but empty desert. He climbed out of his truck and scanned the horizon with binoculars. No landmarks, no positions, no signs of the war. His radio operator tried to raise headquarters. Static. Koch checked his fuel gauge. Half empty. Enough to get back to Benghazi if they turned around immediately. But turning around meant admitting failure. It meant explaining to his superiors why he got lost. With a compass and a map, Koch made a decision. We continue northeast. The front line must be close. It wasn't close. By nightfall, Koch's convoy was 90 kilometers south of where he thought he was. His trucks were running on fumes. His men were exhausted. At 2100 hours, British reconnaissance spotted the convoy, stopped in the desert. The report reached Tech's desk the next morning. 22 German trucks, full of fuel and ammunition, abandoned because the convoy commander got lost navigating by compass. British ground forces captured all 22 trucks without firing a shot. The drivers had walked away, trying to reach German lines on foot. Most were picked up 2 days later by British patrols. Lieutenant Hollis stared at the report. How did this happen? They were navigating by compass. Compass shows direction, Tex said. Doesn't show roads. The new road the engineers built looks like the old route on German maps. Koch followed what he thought was the mapped road, ended up somewhere else entirely. You knew this would happen. I knew it might happen, sir. Desert navigation is hard. Maps are only useful if they're accurate, and the desert changes too fast for maps to stay accurate. Hollis looked at Tex for a long moment. How many convoys do you think are lost right now? Hard to say, sir, but if they're all navigating by compass and using old maps, I'd guess at least a few. The estimate was conservative. Between August 10th and August 20th, German logistics officers reported 31 convoys experiencing significant navigation difficulties. 12 convoys arrived more than 6 hours late. 6 convoys became completely lost and required rescue. 4 convoys were captured intact by British forces. The fuel and ammunition losses were catastrophic. Rommel's planned August offensive had to be delayed 3 weeks because supplies weren't reaching the front line. German intelligence launched an investigation. They suspected sabotage, radio intercepts, spies in their logistics command. They never suspected road signs. August 22nd, 1942. Rommel himself demanded answers. He summoned his logistics staff to headquarters. Gentlemen, we are losing supplies faster than the British are destroying them. Convoys are getting lost. Hidden depots are disappearing. Our navigation has collapsed. I want explanations. Oberst Bauer presented his findings. Herr General, we believe British Special Forces are conducting deep desert raids. They are discovering our hidden supply caches and either destroying them or relocating them. They are also interfering with our convoy routes through unknown means. Unknown means? We do not yet understand their methods, sir. But the pattern is clear. Our supply network is under systematic attack. Rommel studied the map. Increase security on all supply routes. Station guards at every depot. Coordinate convoy movements to avoid predictable patterns. Yes, sir. But the new security measures didn't help. Tex wasn't attacking depots with soldiers. He was attacking them with shovels and crowbars and an understanding of how men think when they're lost in a desert. August 28th, 1942. Morrison found Tex working on his truck. Intelligence just intercepted another German message. They're reporting that their fuel consumption is 40% higher than expected. They think there's a mechanical problem with their trucks. Tex smiled. It's not mechanical. I know that, you know that, but they don't. They're pulling trucks off the line for inspections, wasting time checking engines that work fine. How long can we keep this up? Morrison asked. Tex wiped grease from his hands. Until they stop trusting anything. Maps, signs, compasses. When you don't know what to believe, you stop moving. And when you stop moving, you lose. 300 miles west, Rommel stared at logistics reports and wondered why his supply network was collapsing. He had tanks, he had soldiers, he had ammunition. But he couldn't get any of it where it needed to be. And somewhere in the desert, a truck driver from Texas was moving road signs. September 2nd, 1942, 40 miles west of El Alamein, Tex found the first German road sign at 0400 hours. Fresh paint, clean lettering, planted exactly where a British sign had been 3 days ago. The sign read in German, Kraftstofflager, 9B, Ost 12 kilometers, Fuel Depot, 9B, East 12 kilometers. Tex pulled the sign out of the ground and studied it. Professional construction, standardized format. The Germans had stopped trusting British signs. Now they were making their own. Morrison climbed out of the passenger seat. That's new. That's smart, Tex said. They figured out we were lying to them. So they stopped listening. What do we do? Tex looked at the German sign. Then he smiled. We make their signs lie to. By September 5th, Tech's team had located 40 German road signs scattered across the supply routes. The Germans had installed their own navigation network, signs in German, markers only their drivers could read. Lieutenant Hollis reviewed the situation. If the Germans are using their own signs, we can't intercept their convoys anymore. Not exactly, sir, Tex said. We just need to learn German. You speak German? No, sir, but I can read a sign, and I can move a sign. Doesn't matter what language it's in. That night, Tex and Chen drove to a German sign marking a fuel depot, 15 kilometers north. They pulled the sign out of the ground, carried it 8 kilometers east, and replanted it, pointing south. The next night, they moved 4 more German signs, each one redirected to empty desert or British positions. On September 8th, a German convoy followed one of the altered signs. They drove 20 kilometers south, expecting to find their own fuel depot. Instead, they found a British armored patrol, 3 German trucks captured, 12 soldiers taken prisoner. The captured convoy commander told interrogators he'd been following a German road sign, an official marker installed by his own logistics command. The interrogation report reached Tex's desk 2 days later. Hollis read it twice. They're going to figure this out. Eventually, Tex said, but by then, they'll be afraid to trust any sign, German or British. When you can't trust navigation, you can't move supplies. And when you can't move supplies, you lose. But the Germans were adapting faster than Tex expected. September 12th, 1942, Oberst Bauer issued new orders to all German convoy commanders. Verify all road signs before following them. Check coordinates against maps. Confirm depot locations via radio before proceeding. The new verification procedures slowed German logistics significantly. Convoys that used to make depot runs in 4 hours now took 8. But the system prevented them from following false signs. Tex had they needed a new approach. He found it in the German habit of efficiency. German convoys communicated via radio. When a convoy reached a depot, they radioed back, confirming the location. Other convoys used those confirmations to verify their own routes. British signals intelligence was intercepting these confirmations, which meant Tex knew exactly which German signs were real and which routes were actually being used. September 15th, 0200 hours. Tex studied the intercepted radio logs. A German convoy had confirmed fuel depot 11C at specific coordinates. 3 more convoys had requested those coordinates in the past 48 hours. Depot 11C was real, active, heavily used. Tex drove to the location with Morrison and Chen. They found the depot exactly where the Germans said it would be. 200 fuel drums under camouflage netting. No guards, just supplies waiting for pickup. We destroy it? Morrison asked. Tex shook his head. We improve it. They spent 3 hours adding British markers around the German depot. Fuel drums with British serial numbers, empty supply crates with British markings, tire tracks from British trucks. Then They planted a sign 500 meters away, a British sign, clear lettering. Captured enemy supplies, authorized personnel only. When the next German convoy arrived, they would find their depot marked with British identification. They would assume it had been captured. They would radio back, reporting the loss. Other German convoys would avoid the area, and 200 drums of perfectly good fuel would sit unused in the desert because both sides thought the other controlled it. Chen stared at the finished work. This is psychological. Wars are always psychological, Tex said. You don't have to destroy the enemy, you just have to make them destroy themselves. September 18th, 1942. A German supply convoy approached Depot 11C following confirmed coordinates. The convoy commander saw the British markers and immediately radioed headquarters. Depot 11C has been compromised. British forces have marked the location. Supplies appear intact, but position is clearly under enemy observation. Recommend immediate relocation. German logistics diverted 3 recovery convoys to relocate the fuel. They spent 2 days moving 200 drums to a new hidden location 40 kilometers away. The fuel was never under British control, but the Germans had wasted 4 days and 600 gallons relocating supplies that were never threatened. Tex read the intelligence intercepts and smiled, but Oberst Bauer was getting suspicious. September 20th, 1942. German headquarters. Bauer spread the incident reports across his desk. 17 convoys misdirected. 9 depots relocated unnecessarily. Fuel consumption 60% above projections. This is not random, Bauer said to Major Kleist. Someone is systematically disrupting our logistics. British commandos, sir. Commandos destroy supplies. They don't move road signs. This is something else. Bauer studied the pattern. Every misdirected convoy had followed a road sign. Every relocated depot had shown evidence of British presence that never resulted in actual British attacks. They are not destroying our supplies, Bauer said slowly. They are making us think our supplies are compromised. We waste resources relocating depots that were never discovered. We waste fuel following signs that were altered. We are fighting an enemy who defeats us without firing a shot. Kleist frowned. How do we counter this? We stop relying on any external navigation. No signs, no markers. All convoys receive sealed orders with coordinates. Convoy commanders open orders only after departure. No radio confirmations, no external verification. The new system was implemented September 22nd. Tex noticed the change immediately. German radio traffic dropped to nothing. Convoys stopped confirming depot locations. The intelligence Tex had been using to track German movements vanished. Morrison looked at the silent radio logs. We're blind. Not blind, Tex said, just deaf. We can still see them moving. How do we intercept convoys if we don't know where they're going? Tex pulled out a map and marked every known German supply route. They still have to use roads. Roads go places. We don't need to know their destination. We just need to know their path. September 25th, 1942. British reconnaissance reported a German convoy of 18 trucks moving east on the main coastal road. No radio traffic. No confirmed destination. Tex studied the route. The coastal road passed through a narrow valley, 30 kilometers east. Steep sides, limited maneuver space, perfect ambush terrain. But Tex had a better idea than an ambush. He drove to the valley at midnight with his team. They found a section of road that curved around a rocky outcrop. Drivers approaching the curve couldn't see what was on the other side. British engineers had cleared a minefield from this area 2 weeks ago. The mines were still stacked in crates, waiting for disposal. Tex had Morrison and Chen replant 40 mines across the road on the far side of the curve. Then he placed a German road sign before the curve. The sign read, Achtung Minen, alternative route 2 kilometers Süd. Warning mines, alternate route 2 kilometers south. When the German convoy reached the sign, they would see a warning about mines. The sign would direct them to take an alternate route south. The alternate route was real. It existed. British engineers had built it as a bypass during minefield clearing operations, but the bypass added 40 kilometers to the journey. And at the end of the bypass was nothing. No depot, no destination, just desert. The German convoy would follow the detour to avoid mines that weren't on the main road. They would waste fuel, driving 40 extra kilometers. And when they tried to return to the main road, they would be 60 kilometers behind schedule with half their fuel gone. September 27th, 0800 hours. The German convoy approached the curve. The commander saw the mine warning sign and immediately stopped. He consulted his sealed orders. No mention of mines on this route. But the sign was German. Official format. Clear warning. The commander made the decision every cautious officer would make. He took the detour. 18 trucks drove south following the bypass road. They drove for 2 hours expecting to rejoin the main route. They never found it. By 1400 hours the convoy was lost. By 1800 hours they were out of fuel. British patrols found the abandoned trucks the next morning. 18 trucks, full of ammunition and medical supplies, captured without resistance. The convoy commander told interrogators he'd followed a German mine warning sign. British engineers checked the main road. No mines. The sign had been a lie. Lieutenant Hollis read the report. The Germans are going to realize someone is planting false signs. Let them realize it, Tex said. By the time they figure it out, they'll be afraid to trust any sign anywhere. And an army that can't navigate can't fight. October 1st, 1942. Rommel postponed his planned offensive for the second time. Fuel shortages, ammunition delays, supply convoys arriving days late, or not at all. German logistics officers were filing reports about a phantom enemy who moved signs and created confusion without ever appearing. Bauer knew the truth now. Someone in the British forces understood logistics better than any commando. Someone who knew that you didn't win wars by destroying supplies. You won by making the enemy waste them. He just didn't know it was a truck driver from Texas. Tex sat in his tent reading intelligence summaries. Rommel's offensive delayed. German supply efficiency down 70%. Fuel stockpiles critically low. Morrison ducked into the tent. Intelligence says the Germans are pulling back, shortening their supply lines. Good, Tex said. Shorter lines mean less territory. Less territory means we're winning. You think moving signs won the war? No, Tex said, but it bought time. Time for reinforcements to arrive. Time for Rommel to run out of fuel. Wars aren't won by the biggest army. They're won by the army that can still move when the other one can't. 300 miles west, Rommel stared at his fuel reports and wondered how the British had defeated him without destroying a single panzer.